Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my channel. I'm your host, That Creepy Reading, and today I want to present 3 of the top creepypastas of the month, as voted by the people of the Creepypasta Wiki. Now, I want to let you know that this video is brought to you by Patreon donations from people like you, so if you'd like to see the show continue, please consider a donation on Patreon. With that being said, I will not waste any more of your time as we get into these creepypastas. Subject C. After the Q&S testing lab was discovered during World War II, local scientists listened to audio files left there by a currently faceless doctor, a doctor named Howard Brown. After going through all of the files, the scientists discovered that the monster that was responsible for all the deaths in the lab, known only as Subject C, had escaped the lab soon after the doctor had been killed. Wanting to capture this monster, as there's a great chance it was still alive, a group of paranormal investigators, British soldiers, and field scientists went on an expedition to find the beast Subject C. On all of the people taking part of the expedition, a dagger, a pistol, a canteen of water, and 10 meters of rope were loaded into a backpack. One of the field scientists, Daniel Grenda, kept a journal of the events along the trip. These are those journals. October 12th, 1917, 1500. If you find this journal, chances are that the expedition to find Subject C was a success. This journal may be in a museum, but hey, I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Daniel Granetta. I'm a field scientist among those chosen to take part on an expedition to find Subject C. The beast escaped from a medicine testing lab many years ago. I'm sorry, I'm a little skittish nervous right now. One of the paranormal investigators, Dr. Yurt Slaglov, has tracked its movements down to one singular location. The Tiverradon Woods Pine Forest in Ireland. As I write this, we are tracking military planes to the forest right now. We plan to split into 2 groups, each with 3 field scientists, 2 paranormal investigators, and 5 soldiers. I am in Team Beta with Dr. Slaglov. Our group is to secure the southern end of the forest to find Subject C. October 13th, 1917, 900. Yesterday's exposition went considerably well, if I do say so myself, although it has led to almost nowhere. Our entire 6-hour search, we did not catch a single glimpse of the beast. However, the day is not a complete loss. One of the trees in the forest has 4 scratches on it, each secreting some sort of black matter. Could it be sludge, or even some form of ectoplasm? We didn't dare touch it, but Dr. Slaglov collected a sample in a bottle for future study. We haven't heard from Team Alpha yet. I assume they hadn't found anything either. October 15th, 1917, 1800. We have once again found these scratch marks on even more trees yesterday, which would have overjoyed us. The reason it didn't is because one of our soldiers went missing in the wee hours of the morning. We devoted yesterday's search to finding Subject C, and today is to find the other soldier, a gunny sergeant, Jonathan Hitchcock. We were not pleased with what he had found. At about 1700, we found a man-made clearing in the forest. The trees looked as if they'd been freshly cut down, and they had the same substance as on the scratch trees from earlier. Most unsettling, we had found Gunny Sergeant's corpse cut into 5 even pieces, with clothing and skin removed. This is eerily similar to what we had found that had happened to the soldiers in the lab. Upon close examination of the body, we found a pistol completely unloaded and the barrel warm. His dagger was also out. It appears he put up a fight. However, oddest of all, His canteen was filled with a black substance, similar to blood. The same thing that we found on the trees. No doubt this is the work of Subject C. October 16th, 1917, 11:54. We lost 2 of them this time. One soldier whose name eludes me at the moment, and a paranormal investigator, Dr. Nathan Radley. His father was one of the soldiers who supervised the Quinn-S testing project many years ago. We didn't inform him that it wasn't the beast that killed his father. Only a bullet. This time we found another clearing made by Subject C, this time with 2 corpses. The soldiers were almost untouched. His throat and wrists were slit with Nathan's dagger. It appears that soon after the beast attacked Nathan, as only his bloody dagger was taken out. His backpack was stolen and his clothing and skin was removed, unlike the soldier's corpse. Once again, the canteen was filled with beast blood. That's what I've called this cryptoplasmic substance. October 17th, 1917. There are only 4 of us left. The remaining soldiers were taken this time. We found another clearing made by the beast and 2 corpses in the same state as the soldier. The third was in the usual condition. Sliced into 5 pieces, clothing and skin removed. And a canteen with beast blood. My guess was that was the one of the soldiers were made to kill one another. And the 2 remaining were made to fight to the death. It's a wild guess, but Dr. Sokolov thinks I'm, spot on. October 18th, 1917. No time given. I was right. I was right. I was right. I was taken by Subject C today along with the rest of Team Beta. Upon waking, I was told by a stony voice, "Killed a Dr. Uritz must die. He has something of mine." I complied, not wanting any trouble from the thing. Dr. Brown was absolutely right in his proportions. He was 3 meters tall and had 4 claws. The dark aura note wasn't exaggerated either. I stabbed Dr. Slaglov in the temple. I assumed this would mean a quick death. I was correct. He didn't even wake up. I was ordered to shoot the other 2 next, both of them in the stomach first, then in the foot. This woke both of them up, but strangely, only after I fired the final bullet, Subject C then told them to fight to death, and forced me to watch. I listened, fearing death as my alternative. The battle was fairly quick. They just pulled out the guns and shot each other. It appears the beast was amused as he let me go. Yeah. October 19th, 1917. I will never see them again. My family, my friends, I am stuck here. I traced the steps back to the landing zone. What did I find? Nothing. The planes were gone, and now I'm hearing noises similar to the stony voice saying that these are my final moments. He was right. I don't prefer the name, but these are my final moments. She was asking for it. She was asking for it. I've already got some of you pissed. I don't even know what you don't even know what she was asking for. Maybe she wanted a cold drink of water. But that's not where your mind went. You're sick. You're just as bad as the rest of the perverted society which will try to destroy her mind, body, and spirit. Nothing has happened was her fault, not the length of her skirt, just above the knees, not the cut of her blouse. There still was a room to imagine her curves, not in the way that she walked or talked or anything else. The only thing she was guilty of was having a pretty face, and more than just a pretty face. Flawless porcelain skin, haunting dark eyes, and a smile that would entice an angel into sin. The moment I entered the restaurant, I saw her bussing tables. I knew what was in store for her. Maybe not today, although I wouldn't be surprised considering how she looked bent over when she tried to wipe it down. Maybe not tomorrow walking home from class, but sooner or later someone was going to see the goddess and force her into submission. The monsters who do it, you don't think beyond the gratification of the moment. How would it feel to hold her down while you strip? How soft the skin on her thighs would feel when you crush them in your hands. How she quivers when you, well, for lack of a better term, enter. You don't think about what it will do to her tomorrow when she's crying herself to sleep. You don't wonder if she will flinch when her lover touches her a year from now. Or whether she can look herself in the mirror without hating what she sees. She's lucky I took sympathy on her while I watched her bustle around the restaurant. She smiled at me when she caught me watching. She must have known that I was there to protect her. When I slipped into the kitchen after her, it was just a game that made her act surprised. I was her guardian angel. The only thing standing between me and her were all the horrors in the world. I asked her name, but she said customers weren't allowed back here. It was good that she was shy, but wouldn't be enough. Not for a pretty face like that. Even draining the old cooking grease to take outside. She looked like a model. Maybe she was even trying to become one, unwittingly inviting the entire world to fantasize about what they would do to her. I followed her outside, but she wouldn't talk to me. I was starting to get annoyed at this point, but I want to remind myself I was doing for her good and not my own. Back inside again, now she's threatening to get the manager. But there wouldn't always be a manager around to protect her. Even I couldn't always be there. There's only one thing that can save her. I didn't hold her down for long, 10 seconds, and in a fresh batch of boiling grease was enough to cure that pretty face. She's struggling hard, but she couldn't stop me now. She couldn't stop her real attacker in the future. 10 seconds was enough for her skin to start melting into the pan. No one was going to hurt her now. Not how she looked after I was done with her. She was asking for it. But now, she will get it. All because I saved her. Protect me. Do you believe in guardian angels? Yeah, I never did either. My name's Ann, and I'm from Windsor, Vermont. I'm a first-generation American, although my family is originally from Sweden. I've never been one to believe in anything paranormal until it happened. You must be a little confused to what I'm talking about, so why don't I explain? When I was younger, my grandmother had a little Victorian statue of a woman. I was always terrified of this statue, but I kept that information to myself. For some reason, the name Victoria always came to my mind when I saw her, so that was the name I gave her. Every time I'd pass by her, I would feel her gazing at me as if she was watching me to make sure I behaved. Victoria had left me alone for some time, which worried me a little, but I didn't feel like questioning it. About 9 years later, when I was 17, I could feel Victoria awaking from some sort of supernatural sleep, and she was stronger than ever. I started to avoid my grandmother's room because the statue would absolutely terrify me. From time to time, I swear I could hear her hissing my name as I walked by my grandmother's room, as if she was calling out to me for me to come near her. I tried hopelessly to ignore her, but it eventually became impossible. I was in the car with my mother one day when this feeling of sadness and fear came over me. We were driving through the back roads of rural Vermont. So the woods were all around us. I have always been afraid of those roads because they were so eerie. I tried to ignore it by going off into one of my daydreams, but that all stopped as I looked out my window. At that very moment, all of my nightmares about this statue had come true. There was Victoria, leaning up against a tree in the middle of the woods. There was one thing that was drastically different about her. She was not a statue, she was real. My mouth dropped open, and I tried yelling, but nothing would come out. Her appearance almost completely altered. So much that for a moment, I was not sure if it was actually her. The only reason why I knew it was her was because of the distinctive outfit she wore. The dark green dress that went up to the top of her neck and so long that it covered her feet completely, with little flowers placed evenly all over the dress. She did not have on her long green gloves, and her hair was not the usual blonde. Instead, it was a light gray color. In the statue, she had matching large fancy green hat, but that was nowhere to be found in this figure. In the hat's place was a simple black bonnet. Her face was white as snow, and her eyes were as wide and as black as the night. She had a terrible set of circles under her eyes, and her lips was a blue-gray color. Her lips pursed so tightly, you could see all the wrinkles around her mouth. She held a hand out to her chest, grabbing at her dress, and her other hand keeping her steady next to a tree. She had the most worried look on her face, and I could tell that she wanted to tell me something. When we passed the area where I had spotted her, I frantically turned around in my seat to see if she was still there. And of course, like most stories, she was not there. "What's wrong, Anna?" She always calls me that when I'm upset. "Nothing. I thought I saw a deer." I kept quiet the rest of the way home. Later that night, as I was laying in bed, I started to get the same feeling of sadness and fear from earlier. Before the feeling overpowered me, I decided to call my, boyfriend, Kyle. We had only been dating for a couple of months, but we had grown to love each other incredibly. As I told him what happened earlier in the day, I began to cry, and Kyle told me that he would come over if I wanted him to, but I told him it wasn't necessary. Try to get some sleep, Anne, and I'll, come to see you in the morning," Kyle said in a calm, caring, carefree voice. After talking to Kyle, I became very relaxed and fell into a deep sleep. Well, I thought it was a deep sleep until I woke up in a cold sweat. I looked over my clock and it was 5 a.m. I looked out my window to see the sun starting to become visible. It was colder than usual for late August, but I did not think much of it. I turned over to fall back asleep, but I was startled by what I saw. Lying next to me was Victoria's black bonnet. I picked it up to examine it better, but when I did, it disintegrated. As soon as it happened, I became so tired that I literally passed out that very moment. I woke the next morning to my mother yelling down to me that Kyle was here. "Hang on, Kyle, I'm getting changed." A few seconds later, my door opened and it was Kyle standing right before me with a devious look on him. "What the hell? I told you to wait a minute." "Do you really care if I, see you naked?" he smiled. "You know I'm self-conscious." "Oh, don't be stupid. You and I both know how beautiful you are, so stop crying for attention with the whole 'I'm ugly' bullshit." I look up to Kyle with a worried look. "What's gotten into you lately?" This was the second time he snapped at me this week. He sighed. "I'll be waiting downstairs trying to obsess over how ugly you are." And I slammed the door behind him. I sat at the end of my bed trying to make sense out of what just happened. I guess he is right. I do care too much about how I look. I finished getting ready and I went to my mirror to get a final look. However, When I saw my reflection, I was mortified. My eyes were bloodshot. I had dark circles under my eyes, and I was so pale. I wanted to scream, but as soon as I opened my mouth, blood started pouring out of the mirror version of me. I crumpled to the ground and started to choke. As I looked down to all the blood around me, Victoria appeared right then and there. All I could see was the bottom of her dress, but I knew it was her. I begun to look up slowly, afraid of her, afraid of what I might see. When our eyes met each other, that feeling came rushing back to me. Victoria was angry, very angry. She was breathing heavily and her hands were balled into fists and shaking ever so subtly. I was sure I was going to die in the middle of my room in a pool of blood, but what happened next was shocking. Victoria started to scream in a high-pitched tone. I thought my eardrums were going to explode as she screamed. Her mouth became wider and wider, and at this point it was so open to such an extent that it became obvious that it was inhuman. I closed my eyes and yelled for her to stop, and as soon as I did, along with the blood, she disappeared. I stood up, quickly, and looked into the mirror. My face was back to normal. How did no one run up to check on me yet? Did I not hear what I just did? I could hear my mother and Kyle outside, and I ran to the window to see what they were doing. Kyle was helping my mother water plants in the front yard. Did they not hear any of that? I decided to brush it off and go downstairs to help them. Later that day, Kyle dropped me off. My mother told me that we were heading over to my grandmother's house, and I was nervous about going over there because I knew I was going to have to face the Victoria statue. My mother was in the kitchen cooking dinner for both of us, while my grandmother and I were in the living room watching a movie. If I was ever going to find out the truth, I needed to talk to my grandmother about the statue now. Hey, Grandma? You know the statue in your room with the Victoria woman? Where do you get it? Why do you want to know? I'm just curious. Well, Anna, if you must know, she's my aunt. Aunt? I didn't know you had a sister, Grandma. She, never talked about her, Anna. She was murdered when she was 18. Who killed her? I do not know. My mother never said any more than that. Why does she have a statue of her? To remember her, I suppose? Now enough of this. That's very depressing. My grandmother got up, walked to the kitchen. I could tell that I had upset her. I grabbed my phone from my purse to check to see if Kyle had texted me. 14 missed calls? What the hell? My phone rang again. When I answered it, and I was greeted by Kyle screaming at me. I had been calling you all night, Anna. Where the hell have you been? Sorry, I didn't hear my phone. You're such a liar. If you don't want to talk to me, you can just fucking tell me. What? Why would I not want to talk to you? Kyle, I love you. The phone dropped and turned off. I guess I forgot to charge my phone or something. I got up to join my grandmother in the kitchen, but as I started walking off towards the kitchen, I begun to hear the sounds of someone crying. It was coming from the upstairs and getting louder. I went upstairs to investigate. When I got to the top of the staircase, I realized it was coming from my grandmother's room. I slowly opened the door to find a woman dressed like Victoria sitting on my grandmother's bed. It wasn't Victoria, though. This woman was wearing a black dress and a black veil covering her face. She's crying hysterically at this point, out of nowhere. A woman appeared in a similar outfit, and she ran to her side and held her while she cried. She's in a better place, Farah. We have to let her go now. The woman lifted her head and said in a rage-filled voice, "If he is ever found, I will get revenge for Victoria." I gasped and stepped backwards, but as soon as they did, they both shot a look at me. They were glaring at me with an angry look in their eyes. They simultaneously stood up and rushed toward me with so much speed. It only took them a single second to find me. Their eyes were black and cold. They just stood there staring at me for what felt like an eternity. When I finally felt Vera lift her veil and say, "You stupid girl, what have you done?" I turned away and ran down the stairs, straight into the kitchen and right into my mother's arms, and I started crying. My mother asked me what was wrong, but I couldn't talk. My grandmother told my mother to take me home and put me to bed. She knew something was wrong, and she knew I had something to do with that statue. I don't remember leaving my grandmother's house or going to bed that night, but when I woke up, my mother was sitting next to me. Good morning. Are you feeling any better? Yeah. I'm sorry I scared you last night. I was up in Nana's room, and I got spooked when I heard a noise. Are you sure that's all? You cried all the way home last night and started yelling about Victoria. Who's this Victoria? Is she someone who's bullying you at school? I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. Well, if you want to talk about it later, you can. However, Kyle's been waiting downstairs for about an hour, waiting for you to wake up. He's going to stay with you while I go to the store. I had forgot about the fight with Kyle I had last night. I was hoping he would understand, but when he came into my room, I could tell he was still angry. He walked over my bed and ripped the covers off of me, and I yelped and I curled up into a ball. I tried calling for my mother, but at this point she already left. Kyle, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? You ignored me all night last night, and you're asking me what's wrong with me. Are you an idiot? I wasn't ignoring you, I swear. You're such a liar, Anna. All you do is lie. I mean, come on. You tell me you love me, and then you hang up in my face. Before I could get a word in, he grabbed me by the hair and dragged me onto the floor. I started begging for him to stop. He dragged me into the hallway and then finally let go. I thought he was done, but he gave me a swift kick to the stomach while I was curled up in the fetal position. While he stood next to me, breathing heavily, I closed my eyes, hoping that he would leave me alone, but then when I opened them, it was far from over. I looked up at Kyle and began to scream in horror when I noticed Victoria standing behind him. And she looked even angrier than before. She was taller as well. She must have been over 8 feet tall. Her face was so deformed that I almost puked. Her eye sockets were empty and her nose was badly broken. That was it. Her lips were missing, as they had been cut off, and there was dry blood around their mouth. Her hair was down and messy, and she had been rolling around in the ground for quite a bit. Kyle jumped and turned to see what I was screaming about. When he saw Victoria, he passed out cold. I started sliding backwards towards the stairs, making sure not to take my eyes off of her. When I got to the stairs, I used a railing to help me get up because I was still in pain from being kicked. I stood there waiting for her to make a move. She was going to kill me, I knew it. She was walking towards me. With every step she took, it was almost like she flickered like a candle. She's now standing right in front of me, and I closed my eyes and I waited for her to end my life. I could hear her wheezing in my ear. Her breath was cold as ice. And she said, "I'm sorry." Why was she apologizing to me? The wheezing disappeared when I opened my eyes, and so did Victoria. I breathed a sigh of relief, and I tried to get him help. I turned to walk down the stairs, but paused in horror. Victoria was at the bottom of the stairs, sobbing uncontrollably. "What do you want from me?" As soon as I said that, she stopped crying and instantly started screaming at me in the high-pitched scream as she did before. I flew towards me at such speed I didn't have enough time to put my hands up in defense. I lost my balance, I'd begun to fall down the stairs, and when I hit the bottom of the staircase, I was in too much pain to move. I could hardly breathe and my body started to go numb. I knew I was dying. Victoria was going to succeed in taking my life. What happened next still surprises me to this day. I didn't die. Victoria didn't kill me. I woke up in the hospital with my mother asleep next to me in a chair. Something was wrong with my vision though. It was blurry. I closed my eyes trying to make the blur go away. When I opened my eyes, the blur was still there. However, I did manage to see that I had company. Standing at the end of the bed were 2 women. I knew right away it was Victoria and her sister Vera. I smiled and whispered the words thank you. I still don't know why I did to this day. They bowed their heads and walked away. Before they vanished, Victoria turned her head to the side, and I think she smiled. I can't tell. When they were gone, my eyes began to become clear, and my mother woke up, and she grabbed me and started to cry. What happened? You had an accident. You fell down the stairs. Yeah. I think I remember. I don't understand. Why wasn't Kyle taking care of you? I didn't know how to tell her what happened. Would she do even if I... Did she even believe me if I told her that Kyle attacked me and our ancestors came to rescue me? I don't know. Nonetheless, she ran over and hugged me. Oh, Anna, I am so happy you're awake. I was getting worried. My mother left to go tell the nurses I was awake. My grandmother then looked at me with a smirk on her face. You're a very lucky girl, Anna. You have a very loving family looking after you. What do you mean? She sighed and begun to tell me. My mother's sister, Victoria, was murdered by her fiancé, Henrik, the night before her wedding. She was found by my mother behind a house the morning after. It was the worst murder Sweden had even seen in a long time. Victoria was very disfigured, but my mother knew that it was her because of the dress she was wearing. No one knew why he did it or what happened to him after. My mother told me that a few years later, Victoria came to my mother in her sleep. They made a pact with each other. They promised never to let another woman in the family go through what they had gone through. I thought my mother had gone mad when she told me this, but now I can see that she was telling the truth. I'm sure you're all wondering too why they would do such a thing and why such a spectral thing could happen. I still don't know. One thing that is true though, Kyle was never seen again after that day. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. It took me a while, but I finally got over what happened and pushed it to the back of my head. Initially, I wasn't going to write this story, but last week when I was moving into my mother's house, from my mother's house into my own, I found Kyle's jacket in my closet. I had no idea how it got there. I didn't want to find out. As I was about to throw it into the trash pile, a piece of paper fell out of pocket. I picked it up, and it was a picture of Kyle and me at the park. His arm was around my shoulder and mine around his waist. What made me cry was seeing us together, but that was behind us. It was barely visible. I knew what it was. There was Victoria standing behind me with a worried look on her face. Behind Kyle was Hendrik. Or at least a man that was dressed in similar Victorian hair, and you could tell that he had a sinister look on his face. My great aunt and my great grandmother were never trying to kill me. They were warning me. They saved my life that day. They are my guardian angel.